Hey everyone, welcome back. Seriously, wherever you are tuning in from right now, I hope you're feeling fantastic and taking good care of yourselves and your loved ones. Sending you all my very best wishes for health, happiness, and strength. Look after yourselves out there. Okay, today we're tackling one of the biggest, most interconnected environmental challenges we face: how climate change shakes the very foundations of life on Earth. We often hear about rising temperatures, melting ice, and extreme weather, but what does that actually mean for the incredible variety of animals, plants, and all the other living things sharing this planet with us? How does a change in the weather ripple out and affect entire ecosystems, from the tiniest insects to the largest whales? That's what we're diving into today. We'll break down the complex ways a warming world is impacting biodiversity, that amazing tapestry of life, using simple ideas and clear examples, so you can understand why this matters for nature and ultimately for all of us. So, let's start with the basics. Biodiversity isn't just a count of different species, it's the whole rich web of life, including the genetic variety within species and the different types of ecosystems they form. It's the forests, oceans, grasslands, wetlands, and deserts, teeming with life adapted to thrive in those specific conditions over thousands or millions of years. Now, climate change is like throwing a giant, unpredictable wrench into this finely tuned machinery. It's not just about things getting a bit warmer on average. It's about the speed of change and the disruption of fundamental patterns that life depends on. Imagine moving the goalposts in a game everyone has played perfectly for centuries, but moving them really fast and in random directions. That's the chaos climate change introduces for countless species. The main drivers are the rising levels of greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, trapping more heat and causing global temperatures to climb. This warming is the engine driving a whole cascade of effects that directly challenge the survival of life as we know it. One of the most direct impacts is simply that it's getting too hot for many creatures in their current homes. Every species has a specific range of temperatures it can tolerate. Think about a fish perfectly adapted to cool mountain streams. As the air warms, the water in those streams warms too. If the water gets too warm, the fish might not be able to breathe properly. Warmer water holds less oxygen, its metabolism might go haywire, or it might become more vulnerable to diseases it could previously fight off. It faces a stark choice: move, adapt, or die. Coral reefs offer a heartbreakingly visible example. Corals have a delicate partnership with colorful algae living inside them. When ocean water gets too warm, even just a degree or two above normal for too long, the stressed corals expel these algae. This is called coral bleaching. The coral turns ghostly white and, crucially, loses its main food source. If the heat stress continues, the coral starves and dies, taking with it the entire complex ecosystem that depends on the reef's structure. This isn't a future threat. Massive bleaching events are happening right now with devastating frequency. But it's not just about the heat itself. Climate change is dramatically altering the rhythm of the seasons, the natural calendar that life has synchronized with for millennia. This shift in timing is called a change in phenology. Spring is arriving earlier in many parts of the world. Flowers bloom sooner, trees leaf out earlier, and insects hatch faster. This sounds nice, but it creates dangerous mismatches. Imagine a bird species that migrates thousands of miles based on the length of daylight, arriving at its breeding grounds expecting to find a feast of caterpillars to feed its chicks. But if the caterpillars hatched weeks earlier because of a warm spring, the peak abundance might be over by the time the birds arrive. The chicks starve. Similarly, pollinators like bees might emerge before the flowers they rely on have bloomed. These timing mismatches can ripple through food webs, disrupting reproduction and survival for multiple species linked together. It's like all the clocks in a complex factory suddenly running at different speeds. Production grinds to a halt. Another massive consequence is the physical loss and transformation of habitats. As the planet warms, climatic zones are shifting towards the poles and higher up mountains. Species adapted to specific conditions need to follow their preferred climate envelope to survive. A mountaintop species, like the iconic American pika, a small, cute relative of rabbits, is already living at the top. As temperatures rise, it literally has nowhere cooler to go. Its habitat shrinks and fragments until it simply disappears. It's trapped on an island of cool air that's vanishing. In the Arctic, sea ice is melting at an alarming rate. This isn't just about polar bears, though they are iconic victims, struggling to hunt seals on dwindling ice platforms. The entire Arctic ecosystem revolves around sea ice. Algae grow underneath it, forming the base of the food web for krill, fish, seals, whales, and birds. Less ice means less algae, cascading into less food for everyone higher up the chain. Coastal habitats are drowning as sea levels rise, fueled by melting ice and the expansion of warming seawater. Mangrove forests, salt marshes, and beaches crucial for nesting sea turtles are being inundated, eroded, and squeezed against human development. Then there's the increasing fury and unpredictability of extreme weather events, another signature of climate change. More intense hurricanes, cyclones, and typhoons rip through forests, shattering trees, destroying bird nests and mammal dens, and devastating coral reefs. Severe droughts turn lush landscapes into parched wastelands, drying up watering holes, killing trees, and making food scarce. Prolonged droughts also make ecosystems much more susceptible to catastrophic wildfires, which are burning hotter, faster, and over larger areas than before. These fires don't just kill animals and plants directly. They obliterate habitats, release massive amounts of stored carbon, and leave landscapes barren and vulnerable to erosion. Conversely, extreme rainfall events cause devastating floods that wash away soil, nests, and burrowing animals, pollute waterways with sediment and chemicals, and drown terrestrial habitats. These sudden, violent events don't give ecosystems time to recover, leading to long-term degradation and loss of species. Let's not forget the oceans. Besides warming and causing coral bleaching, climate change is making the oceans more acidic. The ocean absorbs about a quarter of the carbon dioxide we pump into the atmosphere. When CO2 dissolves in seawater, it triggers chemical reactions that increase the water's acidity. This ocean acidification is a silent but deadly threat, especially to creatures that build shells or skeletons out of calcium carbonate, like corals, oysters, clams, mussels, sea urchins, starfish, and many types of plankton. In more acidic water, it's harder and takes more energy for these creatures to form and maintain their shells. Some plankton species, which form the very base of the ocean food web, have shells that can actually dissolve in highly acidic conditions. If these tiny plankton struggle, it affects everything that eats them, from small fish to giant whales. It's like weakening the foundation of an entire underwater skyscraper. Climate change also acts as a threat multiplier, making existing problems for biodiversity much, much worse. Habitats are already under immense pressure from human activities like deforestation, pollution, overfishing, and urban sprawl. Adding climate stress pushes already stressed species and ecosystems closer to the edge or over it. For example, a forest fragmented by roads and agriculture might have species struggling to move anyway. When the climate shifts, their ability to migrate to suitable new areas is severely hampered. They're trapped in isolated patches that are becoming increasingly unsuitable. Pollution weakens organisms, making them less able to cope with the added stress of higher temperatures or new diseases that might spread more easily in a warmer world. Overfished populations have less genetic diversity and fewer individuals, meaning they have less capacity to adapt to changing ocean conditions. Climate change doesn't operate in a vacuum. It intensifies every other challenge wildlife faces. The impacts aren't felt evenly across the board. Some places and some species are being hit much harder and faster. Polar regions, Arctic and Antarctic, are warming at least twice as fast as the global average, making them the front lines of climate impacts on biodiversity. Mountain ecosystems, islands, and coastal areas are also exceptionally vulnerable. Species with specialized needs, those living in small or isolated habitats, those with slow reproduction rates, like many large mammals, and those already endangered are at the greatest risk. Cold-adapted species, like those in the Arctic or high mountains, are obvious victims. But even tropical species, often living near their upper heat limits already, are facing unprecedented heat stress. The sheer speed of change is critical. Evolution usually works slowly over generations. The current rate of climate change is far too rapid for most species to adapt through natural selection. Migration to cooler areas is often blocked by human development, oceans, or simply the lack of suitable habitat nearby. The loss of biodiversity isn't just a tragedy for nature. It has profound and direct consequences for human well-being, hitting us right where we live. Healthy, diverse ecosystems provide us with essential services we often take for granted. They provide clean air by absorbing pollutants and producing oxygen. They filter and regulate our water supplies. They pollinate our crops. Think about bees, butterflies, bats, and birds moving pollen between flowers, essential for fruits, vegetables, nuts, and coffee. Around 75% of our leading global food crops rely, at least partly, on animal pollinators. Climate change disrupts pollinator life cycles and distributions, threatening our food security. Diverse ecosystems help control pests and diseases naturally. Forests and wetlands act as giant sponges, absorbing rainfall and reducing the severity of floods, while also releasing water slowly during droughts. Coastal ecosystems like mangroves and coral reefs buffer shorelines from storms and erosion. As biodiversity declines due to climate change, these vital services weaken or fail. We lose potential sources for new medicines. Many drugs originate from plants and animals. Fisheries collapse as ocean ecosystems are disrupted. Agriculture becomes harder as pollinators decline, water becomes scarcer, and soils degrade. Our own health can suffer from increased exposure to diseases and the mental health impacts of losing natural spaces. Ultimately, by undermining biodiversity, climate change is undermining the life support systems that sustain human civilization. So, is there any hope? Absolutely, but it requires urgent, decisive action on two major fronts. The most crucial step is slowing down climate change itself. This means drastically and rapidly reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, moving away from burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas, for energy and transportation towards clean, renewable sources like solar, wind, and geothermal. It means improving energy efficiency everywhere, protecting and restoring forests, which are massive carbon sinks, and shifting towards more sustainable agricultural practices. Every fraction of a degree of warming we prevent matters enormously for biodiversity. Limiting global warming to the targets set in international agreements, like well below 2 degrees Celsius, aiming for 1.5 degrees Celsius, gives ecosystems and species a much better fighting chance to adapt or move. The slower the change, the more time nature has to respond. The second vital front is helping nature withstand and adapt to the changes that are already happening and will continue. We call this climate change adaptation for biodiversity. A key strategy is protecting and connecting habitats. Creating robust networks of protected areas, national parks, wildlife reserves, marine protected areas gives species safe havens. But crucially, we need to connect these areas with wildlife corridors, strips of natural habitat that allow animals and plants to move freely across landscapes as the climate shifts. Think of it as creating pathways for nature to migrate to cooler areas, like up mountain slopes or towards the poles. Restoring degraded ecosystems, replanting forests, restoring wetlands, rebuilding mangroves, makes landscapes healthier, more resilient, and better able to store carbon and buffer against climate impacts like floods or droughts. We also need to actively manage vulnerable species and ecosystems. This might involve carefully relocating species to new, suitable habitats, assisted migration, breeding programs for critically endangered species, or restoring specific habitats like coral reefs through active planting of heat-tolerant corals. Reducing all the other pressures we put on nature, stopping deforestation, curbing pollution, managing fisheries sustainably, controlling invasive species, is essential to give biodiversity the best possible chance to cope with climate stress. What can we do as individuals? Our choices matter and add up. Reduce your carbon footprint. Drive less, use public transport, bike, or walk. Make your home energy efficient. Insulation, efficient appliances, LED lights. Choose renewable energy options if available. Eat less meat, especially beef. Livestock farming is a major emission source and reduce food waste. Support sustainable choices. Buy products certified as sustainable, like FSC for wood, MSC for seafood. Support companies committed to environmental responsibility. Reduce your consumption overall. Buy less stuff. Repair what you have. Be a voice. Talk to friends and family about climate change and biodiversity. Support conservation organizations working on the ground. Most importantly, vote. Vote for leaders at all levels of government who take the climate and biodiversity crises seriously and commit to strong policies and investments in solutions. Connect with nature, spend time outdoors, appreciate the wildlife and plants around you. The more we value nature, the harder we'll fight to protect it. Climate change is fundamentally reshaping the living world at a pace unseen in human history. It's altering temperatures, shifting seasons, intensifying weather, acidifying oceans, and destroying habitats, pushing countless species towards extinction and unraveling the intricate web of life that sustains us all. The loss of biodiversity isn't just about losing charismatic animals. It's about degrading the essential natural systems that provide us with clean air, water, food, medicine, and protection from disasters. It's a crisis intertwined with our own future well-being. The science is clear, and the impacts are already visible. But the story isn't over. By taking bold action to slash greenhouse gas emissions and simultaneously helping nature adapt and thrive, we can still preserve a rich and resilient planet. Protecting biodiversity in the face of climate change is about safeguarding the foundation of life on Earth, for all species, including our own. It's the ultimate act of stewardship for the generations to come. Thanks so much for taking the time to learn about this critical connection. Wishing you all health and happiness, stay strong, and let's all do our part to protect this amazing, biodiverse planet we call home. Take care, and I'll see you next time.